And my OBGYN said menopause is not a disease to be treated.
Wow.
Would not even check my hormone levels. Said, well, they'll be all over the place. There's no point in drawing blood. You know, this was a man. And it was probably the first time that I was like, oh, I don't love that you're not a woman and that you don't have anything else to offer me.
Well, good morning and welcome to In the Know with KO. I'm your host, Kristen Adams, also known as KO. Today we are going to jump into a very necessary topic. But before we do, I'm going to encourage you to grab a cup of whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to first introduce my great friend, who is also an incredible local business person, Amanda Brule Maggiore.
Maggiore.
See, we talked about it, and now I'm butchering it. I've known your name for years, and today the pressure's on, and I messed it up. And then she's joined with her business partner, Dr. Leanne DeRigne. DeRigne. See, another one I practiced, and apparently if I practice it too much, I'm going to mess it up. But before we get into why they're here and the super duper topics for women that we're going to touch on, I'm going to throw some rapid fire around. Ladies, are you ready?
We're ready.
Amanda with an A, we're starting with you, okay?
Okay.
So, tennis or pickleball?
Ooh, tennis every day.
All right, Dr. Leanne, early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Amanda, coffee or tea?
Always coffee in a very specific way. I need oat milk.
Yes.
And I sweeten it with maple syrup.
See, that's the specific answer that we're looking for. For future podcast guests on my show, that's what we're talking about. Okay, Dr. Leanne, cake or pie?
Neither. I have no sweet tooth.
Wow.
Oh, good.
That is, you're like a superhero.
It's all salt.
Okay, so that would be the next question, but I didn't put it on here. But now we know. See, this is why we do these things. All right, Amanda, drama or comedy?
Ooh, comedy. I like to laugh.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Leanne, winter or summer?
Summer. All year.
That's why she's a Floridian now.
Hello.
Right?
Literally living in summer paradise. All right, Amanda, dogs or cats?
Oh, dogs. I'm allergic to cats.
Same.
Yes.
So am I.
I'm actually allergic to dogs too, but we have two. So
I have two that are, non-shedding, whatever. Okay.
No, don't have that. We have a golden now.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of shedding.
Yeah, so that dog makes its own dog with all of the hair.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to close it out with Dr. Leanne, hip hop or country?
Oh, country for sure.
Excellent. All right, well, there's a lot of love already shared between us, and that's just super exciting. So we're going to jump right in about why these two amazing women are here. I've had the pleasure of knowing Amanda for several years because we play tennis together. We're on the same team, different levels now, but we're on the same team in our local community, which is super fun. But Amanda and Dr. Leanne have launched an incredible, and I'm going to say highly necessary business, the Center for Women and Families. Now, the name in itself encompasses exactly what it is, which I think is amazing. I'm going to give a brief description about it, but I'm also going to throw the website up there. So I want you to click on the website, get to know them a little bit more, and also see how they can support you and your family. So this is a boutique mental health practice. They specialize in supporting women through life's most transformative and challenging moments, from fertility to postpartum, divorce, depression, menopause, and everything in between, which is a lot. They also provide compassionate, personalized care. So this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. It's based on every unique individual person's needs. And the idea of bringing women together, in my opinion, is, like I said, it's necessary. I mean, we live in a world now where there's so many things thrown at us, and sometimes we just don't know where to even begin to tackle it, right? So with that said, I want to just share that, Amanda is a licensed clinical social worker and has been doing this for several years. She's been in the world of mental health and supporting children and families for several years in some difficult environments, I would like to say. And Dr. Leanne is actually a professor at Florida Atlantic University, which is how they met several years ago. And I love the full circle moment, how you are co-founders of this amazing business. So with that said, I would love to give you each an opportunity to just welcome everyone and maybe share what motivated you to launch this. So Dr. Leanne, Would you like to share that?
Sure, absolutely. I actually think the story of this is really incredible. Amanda was one of my very first students. And from the moment I met her, I was just like, yeah, this is my girl. Like she, even though, we had a power dynamic where I was her professor and she was my student, it really didn't exist. And I can still remember in my head her sitting in my office, and I was just like, how am I going to continue to hang out with this woman? And we did. We started working out together at CrossFit. That was for years. We were workout buddies at our local CrossFit in Delray Beach, and we just became really good friends. So as I kind of had this midlife transition of my own last year.
I love that you don't say midlife crisis, you say midlife transition, because that's
Absolutely.
really what it is. It doesn't
Right.
have to be a crisis. Okay, good.
Completely. And I wouldn't describe it as a crisis.
Excellent.
My daughter graduated from high school and went to Auburn. So we took our first child to college. And we're not an empty nest yet. I still have a high schooler, a son. But I knew my time was suddenly growing. Like I had really been a very present mom after school and had done all the drop-offs and pickups. And, I was always there from 3 o'clock on to monitor whatever was happening. And my, job as a professor allowed that on the days that I could. If I were teaching, I couldn't. But anyway, I knew, I was like, oh, I have time in front of me. What am I going to do with this? Like new time of my life. And I was like, I really have always wanted to go into private practice. And I was also having quite the experience with menopause at the same time, which if we have time, would love to talk about that. But I scheduled a lunch with Amanda. I was like, this is going to come out of nowhere. I know that she's had lots of kids and is very busy. But I was like, please meet me for lunch. And I just dropped it on her lap. I was like, I want to do this. You're the only person I want to do this. I don't think that this kind of practice exists to support women. And she was just like, I'm on, let's go. And she kind of had her own, addition to it, which I'll let her describe.
Okay. So Amanda,
I'm in the hot seat now.
so now she's put you on the spot to share, but I would love for you to share, because I think for anyone, who goes on the website and starts to really understand what you guys are offering, I think understanding how you got there is where the compassion begins, because it lends itself to those ladies like myself who understand, okay, even if they know you personally, whether it's, in the community, at your college where you are a professor, understanding your personal motivation and stake in the game is what makes that compassion come through. So Amanda, please share.
Sure. To echo what Leanne was saying, like our journey in finding one another is pretty remarkable. I mean, I started grad school at the age of 24. She was my very first professor, and she has seen me through transition through life. I mean, she was at my wedding. She has seen me, have these 3 children. So through that, right, these life cycles that I've gone through, Leanne's been there. And so it was like, she says like, oh, it came out of left field, but like, it didn't feel that way. It felt like a normal sort of transition and another, episode of our lives together. So I thought that was really, really a great way to start. And then we are very passionate about women and women's issues. And like Leanne spoke about, like her life took her, in a different direction once her eldest had gone to college. And for me, I have 3 young kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And, I've had some journeys along the way, whether it be difficult pregnancies, really difficult birth and postpartum with my last child, my middle son being diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So it's like all these different things that, I forgot how you described it, not crises, but they were definitely things that, didn't expect along the way that sort of has changed my trajectory and my path. And I have become very passionate about, I would say, postpartum care. I just think we put this expectation on women, like, here's a baby.
Yes.
Figure it out.
Absolutely.
Good luck,
You're right. You're right.
And I had 3 C-sections, so 3 major surgeries, which again, it's like, here you go. Here's a baby. Sorry that they just cut through your abdomen wall, but here's a baby. And so really just wanting to provide that care to women in a supportive environment. And I feel like a lot of this stuff comes from society and the expectation of how we should be after birth in the months, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to show that vulnerability. You know, there's something I've talked about many times on this show, and vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. I find it to be a sign of strength because when you put yourself out there in a vulnerable position, whether it's sharing your own story or offering empathy to someone else, it immediately actually helps you because once you start talking about it and you say it out loud, you're like, oh, okay, wow, I'm not alone. That's the first thing, right? And then the next part of that is now you're offering some encouragement maybe to somebody else, but you're also admitting, hey, I could use a hand. But you're absolutely right. I think you both hit the nail on the head that the society we live in has extremely unrealistic expectations. I remember when I had my older son, I was working full time in the hotel management sector. Very demanding job because the doors on hotels have no locks, and that's because they're always open, right? 24/7, 365, every holiday, nights, weekends, you name it. And it was very demanding, but I managed through. But I remember when my son was born, the pressure to get back to work was unbelievable, and it really stole the joy of what I should have had, which was bonding with my baby. I was so focused on hurry up and get better, hurry up and, and find a preschool for him to go to, which, I found one by my work so I could go and see him on my lunch breaks. But there you go. I'm giving up my lunches so I could go be with my baby. But you're right. There's these unrealistic expectations. And, I'd also like to know, who decided that? Who decided that? Who decided this is how much time you get to be home? This is how much time you should bond with your child. This is how long it will take you to recuperate. What? Who's deciding that?
Well, and so many women have none of that time. So that's a very privileged leave to have. I mean, we don't have paid maternity or paternity leave at the federal level. We don't have it at the state level. Like that is very much just about your employer.
Is it so it's been 24 years since I had my first child. I was 24 when I had him. It was very eye-opening, his last birthday. But I remember I was protected because of the company that I worked for. They acknowledged FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, right, which is federal. But you're right. There's nothing that mandates that they have to pay you.
Right. It's unpaid. Right. 12 weeks of protected leave that's unpaid. And then it's up to your employer about whether that's paid or not.
Right.
So many women feel like they have to get back to work even faster.
Yeah. Well, because we live in a world where we can't afford to not be there. And then, and then you put childcare into many layers. That in itself, I remember, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm paying more for my kid to go to preschool than for my mortgage. Like, what is that? But you're right. There's that pressure. And I love the way you both have taken not just your professional experiences, but your personal life experiences. And that's what you've layered in to offer this support to women. That's authentic. Right. And that is where the rubber meets the road.
And I feel like there's something going on at OBGYN practices, I'm not going to say in a blanket way, but in terms of getting the mental health support, like I don't think they know who to send people to. And that's really the niche that we're trying to fill here, which is saying, if you have patients who are struggling with, the whole reproductive life cycle, whether that's infertility challenges, prenatal stress, I mean, that can be a very high anxiety time period, postpartum depression, struggling with menopause, with anxiety and sleep. It's so often, I can tell you, I'm not going to tell you what practice, but as my daughter was a senior in high school, I was definitely struggling with all of the menopause stuff happening. And my OBGYN said, menopause is not a disease to be treated.
Oh, wow.
Would not even check my hormone levels. Said, well, they'll be all over the place. There's no point in drawing blood. This was a man. And it was probably the first time that I was like, oh, I don't love that you're not a woman and that you don't have anything else to offer me. And at the same time, at my gym, a lot of times it sounds like, women really bond over their exercise partners. And those are women that they share things with.
Yeah.
And a lot of times about what's going on with their bodies because you're there trying to be healthy. So I was at our CrossFit gym and, there were many of us and we would walk after our workouts and it was all, menopause and marriage and health concerns. And it just, I was like, wow, this is really needed.
Yeah.
This is really needed.
I personally feel that there is a huge gap between what the clinical medical world says we need and should have compared to what we actually have available to us. So that's why I'm so excited to not just see the passion behind this, but the reason behind why you've created this wellness center and so many resources. And you're right, these subjects are things that we've got to do our own homework. I've shared on many shows, and I'm going to continue to share, because each time we put a new episode out there, there's new audience members paying attention. You've got to advocate for yourself. Just because a doctor says this or that does not mean that you have to follow it. It also means you have every right to do your own research and to question what they're saying to you. And you're right. There's also, I feel, there's too many prescriptions being written. And now, again, I'm not saying that I'm against the pharmaceutical industry. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that if you camouflage the situation for too long, you never learn how to get through it, how to push through, how to cope, and how to manage it, and also how to model that behavior for your children, which is something that I feel very strongly in. I want to give my kids the tools, and it's okay to see you not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. But it's not okay to ignore not being okay. And this is where your practice comes into play. And I love the broad array of topics for women that you're right. Because when you put like-minded people together, which you both are, now you're creating a safe place for these women to come in and talk about things. I'm gonna actually transition to an upcoming group therapy session series that Dr. Leanne and Amanda have put together. And I think this is tremendous. Now, this is for our local community, but I'm going to ask a question, something we didn't get to chat about. Is it possible for someone to participate in this in a non-in-person way, like through a Zoom maybe?
Well, that's interesting. It's not something that we have talked about with our first cohort. I think definitely it would be a way that we could transition to being an all Zoom.
Sure.
And offering that, because telehealth is definitely, where a lot of people are at.
Right.
I think for this specific 6 weeks series that we're starting, it would definitely be in person. I think you couldn't do a mix of both, but definitely we can transition. Our goal is to every 6 weeks start with a new cohort. So 6 women in a group with us as facilitators talking about these issues. So we've divided it into 2 different areas. The first being midlife and menopause, and then the second being postpartum, early motherhood.
Yeah.
And really 6 weeks, 6 same women with us as the facilitators for them to really express themselves.
I love it. I think this is great. Like you said, these are, you're mentioning topics, but these are topics that have so many additional components, right? So we say menopause. Well, guess what? Menopause is not just menopause. There's many years of perimenopause, which, I am in that space, and I have found some really great natural support mechanisms for myself that I would love to share. And that's the idea, bringing that in together. But anxiety and sleep problems, long-term marriages, career transitions, parenting teens.
Okay. I know. I love that one.
That's a big one.
It's a big one.
I've always tried to keep the mom circle relative, and I've got so many different circles, whether it's school, sports, church, neighborhood, tennis, you name it. Every single group, you mentioned teenagers, and everyone has this negative thing. But the reality is, my simple rule is I just try to remember how I felt when I was a teenager. It makes it a lot easier, And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I sound like my mother. But that's not such a bad thing. But also touching on depression, anxiety, birth trauma, parenting babies and toddlers, and sleep training. These are all really great topics to share best practices and struggles, because when you share either of those, chances are the person you're sharing it with is also trying to get to the next step, right? So I think these group therapy sessions are amazing. And if you're interested in these and you're here in the greater Boca Raton community, they are going to be launching these the first week of April. Again, it's a 6-week series. And so if you missed the first one, that's okay. Again, we're sharing their website on here, so you can jump on there and find out when the next series starts, and maybe even bring a friend or a family member that is also in need of this, because you can support one another and support your group, right?
Absolutely. And they're on Tuesday nights.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I see on here you have 5:30 to 7 and then 7:30 to 9. So depending on which support group you connect with the most and you resonate with those desired results, then you can figure out which one you would like to join. Maybe you need to go to both. Maybe
Right.
maybe you're like me and you have a wild, crazy
Right.
variety of ages from 24 to 16 to 9.
Right.
Who's crazy? Who's crazy?
Right.
I am.
Absolutely.
I am. Yes.
Well, I wanted
yeah.
to talk too about the career transitions. I see so much of that for people in midlife, and even after the birth of a child. Women are often thinking about, how am I going to manage my career and parenting? And so I think that both of us have really, we have an expertise to bring to the table here. I see so many older students who come back to get a master's degree in their 40s, 50s. And this is often after either children leave to go to college, or sadly, they've been divorced. And suddenly they haven't been working for 10 or 12 years, and they have to figure out, how do I restart a career?
Yeah.
So I think that too is such a challenging time, but also just like so exciting, right? This is kind of your second life. That's what I tell women when they're in front of me and they're scared about, how am I going to be able to do this? I'm like, this is so exciting. Like, this is your second half, your second life, where you get to do something different and something more focused on you. Because I mean, in the end, moms spend so much time thinking about their children's lives that their own lives become very backseat.
Well, yeah, we have mom guilt, if we do anything for ourselves, heaven forbid, right? Like, oh my gosh, I bought myself a new outfit, or I went to the spa, or I got my nails done, or I took a walk. Oh my gosh, all of us have mom guilt because we feel like we should be spending our time differently. But again, who is putting this pressure on us? Sometimes it's ourselves, right? But I think this is why finding a group like this, whether you do in-person, individual, customized sessions, or you come to a group session, either way, you are discovering about yourself, probably identifying what your goals are and how are you going to get there, but also the tools and resources to manage some of these difficult things, I have a question for both of you, or either of you, whichever. Do you think COVID has impacted a lot of these topics?
I'll take that one. I don't know why I'm taking it when I'm really unsure. I think COVID has obviously changed society in different ways, right? To
Yes.
go from like where we were to where we are now. I don't know if it necessarily maybe brought to light some more. I was just speaking with a client yesterday about the change in maybe having more discussions around, mental health, behavioral health that didn't exist before. And I think COVID sort of like took off the veil that people weren't able to sort of hide their struggles as much because it felt so isolating.
Well, sure. We had to face ourselves. I will just share briefly. My dad passed away suddenly March 5th of 2020. And the following week, we had to cancel his funeral, stop all visitors, which for me was huge. I needed that traffic of people, hugs and visits and glasses of wine or coffee, whatever it was. I needed that. That's what made me feel better. And to not have that and to have to face the realities and also not have a celebration of life immediately, we had to wait 2 years to have it, and then homeschooling. Oh, what a nightmare that was. I was like, I could barely help with homework when I wasn't forced to have to do it. But I think that a lot of us were faced with ourselves. And I think it was both good and bad. I think for me, it forced me to have to rise above the difficulties and figure out how to manage it. I had kids still at home. All 3 of them were still home. And, I don't think COVID was the worst time for things like that. I think it actually gave us a lot more tools and resources. I think there was an influx of telehealth resources. Sure. So I feel that now maybe people feel like, oh, well, I'm able to do it because there's more resources. So I'm hoping that we can find the good from that. And, I also learned that I was susceptible to PTSD, depression, and trauma, which I've actually overcome and managed with EMDR, which for anybody who hasn't heard me speak on that, EMDR is eye movement desensitizing and reprocessing. And it is a 100% natural way to you have cognitive therapy of both sides of your brain to walk through a traumatic experience and not have it paralyze you or keep you in that destroyed state of mind. So I fully support all of the different types of approaches that you guys have with such a broad space of women. I know you have a tailored therapeutic approach to meet the unique needs of every individual woman. How do you help clients who might be resistant to therapy or have trouble opening up?
I'm definitely going to let you handle that.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I was going to take it anyway, but then I was like, oh.
Yes. It can be scary. I understand.
More so, I think I wanted to take this question because I am very passionate about it. I think, so the base of my training, which at the time is 24 years old, and I was trained under this modality of Carl Rogers, which was very much about the relationship between the therapist and the client and non-judgmental, positive regard. And at the time, I was like, this is difficult because it was a lot of reflection, right?
Sure.
Reflecting on people's statements, paraphrasing, rephrasing. But now it's so much of the foundation of how I am as a therapist. I really try to create a non-judgmental environment for everyone and really just working with clients to establish that they have the power within them to make these changes, right? I always say this to my clients. I don't know your life better than you do it, right? But I do have strategies and coping mechanisms and things and a way that I can maybe bridge a gap that you're not able to see, but it's all within you. And it's all about me assisting you
Sure.
to bring it out. So I think that the relationship between a therapist and a client is so important, that there's that trust and feeling like you aren't judged and you can be your authentic self in a safe environment. And I think that's what we both provide. And I think that is, so if a client is coming in and has hesitancy, we always do a 15-minute consultation. And I think that's the most important so that you can get to know us.
Yeah.
It's over the phone or Zoom, but just you can get to know us and see what we're about. And then you can see if it feels comfortable and if you want to try. We also use like a variety of modalities. It depends on what clients we're working with. I worked with children at the beginning of my career. And honestly, that was such a good foundation for me because sometimes like they don't want to talk or don't have the ability to say, I hit my friend because I was feeling mad, sad, and so it's about building that foundation. And how can we do that? All right, let's play a game. Let's get to know each other. And so even with adults, teens, it just depends on the group. But I think just being our authentic selves and making the client feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like I said, I think that each of you having your own personal life experiences that you are willing to display, that in itself makes your practice. That's where, when you hear this is a boutique practice, I don't think that it's because it's fancy. I think that because it's special and it's different and it gives you the ability to apply those personal experiences. I love that you're doing that because I've been to therapists for both myself or family members, and I don't necessarily think that they were willing to put themselves out there first to sort of disarm the patient or client to make them feel comfortable and not judged, right? So I think that when you have that fear disarmed, you are now making that vulnerability available so that you can start to break away those different layers. I also understand, just reading up on all of the amazing accomplishments that you both have, which please go on the website and see. There's probably even more that they haven't shared, but you can only fit so much on the page. There's evidence-based modalities such as cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectal behavioral therapy, and it's becoming more known, which I think is tremendous. I would love for you to just give a brief synopsis of why those are now becoming more popular and or so successful.
I think this is you
Let me take
again.
Okay.
This is down your route too of all
It is.
evidence-based
It's true.
practices.
Yes.
So most of these things, have been around for many years. I think, probably when I started school, or maybe before, you can talk about that. But this concept of evidence-based practice was like so important. And using things, that modalities that they've been studied and the interventions have deemed to be successful with a certain population. So you talk about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, works with this population. There's trauma-focused CBT. There's DBT, which you talked about. And so, the importance for evidence-based, obviously, with Leanne being in academia for so many years, and that it was instilled in me in my master's program, is just like, to use things that are going to be successful for specific clients. And I think that that's the most important component of this.
Sure.
And we definitely, we look at the research all the time. I'm always following whatever the cutting edge treatments are. But I will say, like, there's really nothing off the table. Like, if it works for a client, it works. And I think it's better to be open to all kinds of methods than it is to be like, I only do CBT. Right. So we're going to get to whatever works, right? We're going to try lots of different things. And really no strategies off the table. And sometimes things, are so new that we don't have a huge scholarly evidence base yet. But, if you try something and it helps, like I'm going to stick with that. We're going to continue to work with those methods, and we'll try lots of things. And I think that's really where this kind of, individualized treatment plan is. And all of the certifications are fantastic, and we're constantly, educating ourselves and getting new treatment modalities under our belt. But like we're ready to get you to, a better place. That's the goal. And really as quickly as possible. Like I don't think that, I'm speaking now for myself, but I don't like this idea of like, I'm going to be in therapy for years. Like you need relief now. You need it pretty quickly. You need strategies that work. Give me 4, 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Like, we're going to get you to a really different place.
I love that this concept with your boutique practice. You're right. It's not meant to be a lifestyle. Like, therapy is not meant to be a lifestyle. You're training the individual to find things within themselves, to offer strategies, techniques, coping mechanisms, and doing it in a safe, nurturing environment. You're offering compassion, you're offering empathy, and you're right. Sometimes, it's trial and error, but I love that you're doing it in a teaching manner, because this is essentially what being a mom is all about, right? We're going to make mistakes. We're not always going to do the right things, but we're doing it with love, and we're doing it in a nurturing way. And I love that you're both applying that to your practice. And I would encourage anyone and everyone to jump on the website. Again, we're going to throw that up here. Get on the website, learn about the Center for Women and Families, because at the end of the day, you have a choice to make. And if that choice is finding your best self, so you are your best for your children and your families, well, you got to find those resources. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a Google doctor, because that's actually terrifying. If you go online, you're going to find this rabbit hole of negativity, and you can't self-diagnose. I mean, I guess maybe, WebMD has some ideas, but that website does not know you. This boutique practice wants to get to know you so that they can help you. So with that said, Amanda, Dr. Leanne, I want to thank you both so much for coming and introducing your practice on In the Know with KO. I hope that our listeners feel in the know about opportunities, and that they reach out to you, that they check out your website, and in the near future, they're going to powerhouse some social media, which I'm sure will also offer some additional resources. But for right now, their focus is on women and children and helping them. So ladies, thank you again so much for sharing. And also, please don't forget, in April, the group sessions will be starting. So for the local Southeast Florida women, please join these groups and share it with someone who you love, who you think can benefit. Again, if you enjoyed this, please like it, share it, and offer a great review. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.